Hello everyone. It has now been just over a week since I had my first experience with being taken by ambulance to the emergency room. I apparently had what's called a complex partial seizure. It's a very disconcerting experience. I'm all bruised from having them try to put IVs in my arm, which they apparently weren't too successful at doing because yes, my little man is so sympathetic. This is Gabriel. And Gabriel is very sweet and affectionate and very sympathetic and very nurturing. And so as I'm showing you my bruised arm, he gets very, yes, affectionate and sweet. So anyway, it started with my becoming kind of distant and spaced out while I was sitting next to my husband on the couch. And he said that my speech was slow and that I didn't seem alert. I really was kind of slumping over, and I started trembling, shaking, and doing the epileptic thing, okay? So he called the paramedics. I do not remember riding in the ambulance down into town and being taken into the hospital. The first thing I remember is coming to consciousness apparently the next morning, because this episode happened at 10:30 the previous night. I found out that while I was out of it, they gave me a CT scan of my head, and the good news is that they found no abnormal mass and no lesions. So there's no tumor and there's no lesion, and they didn't see any excessive bleeding. So there weren't any physiological abnormalities they could see in the CAT scan. So subsequent to that, they fitted me with the electrodes on the head, and they did an electroencephalogram. And apparently the electroencephalogram shows one little portion of my right temporal lobe of my brain where there was intermittent spikes of electrical activity, alternating with kind of a flat delta wave. When you're alert and relaxed, you're supposed to have kind of a background alpha wave state. But, and I did. According to the EEG, the rest of my brain indicated that the normal, alert, relaxed alpha wave state. But in this one anterior section of the right temporal lobe, and that this could be the focus of the epileptic seizure. The next day, I had a couple of interactions with my husband where I was seeing things that aren't really there. And these are images that I remember from dreams. I remember, over a period of years, off and on. Since living in this house, which we've lived in for 9 years, once in a while I've had a dream that there are entire wings and corridors of this house that extend out and away from the real house, and down these corridors are other rooms and furniture, and sometimes I see distant figures of other people, and I'm thinking in the dream that, oh, I wonder if I walk down the corridor if I can talk to those people and what's going on, you know. I seem to have been aware when having the dream that I was having a dream, and that this really is not a real place. However, the day following coming home from the hospital, according to my husband, I was awake and alert and conversational, and I pointed past my husband into our bedroom, and I said, "Look, have you seen all that over there?" And he said, "What, you mean our bedroom?" I said, "No, I mean all those other rooms, all that other stuff." And apparently, as he tells it, he looks at me and he went, "No, I don't. I haven't." in a waking state, with my eyes wide open, I was seeing convincing, three-dimensional, opaque, architectural structures that were the same that I had seen in a dream. And they looked so real that I was convinced that they actually existed, and I was asking my husband if he could see them. One of the things that Dr. Sheldrake discusses is that he believes that the mind extends in a field surrounding the body, and there it interacts with what we are perceiving and what we are seeing. And he believes that unlike the conventional theory, which states that there's some kind of little miniature image inside the brain and is encoded by the brain into colors and contrast and so forth, he doesn't believe that that image takes place inside the brain. He believes that the mind projects it back out, and then you see this imagery out in the real world, out in physical space, exactly where it really is. After this epileptic seizure, which included absolutely amazingly detailed and convincing architectural images that made me in a state of alertness and being wide awake, believe that there were actually extra hallways and rooms attached to my house and leading away from our living room. I am absolutely convinced that my consciousness extends out into the physical world, and that my consciousness, because of the epileptic problem, which is located in the anterior right temporal lobe, which has to do with visual memory. I've looked this up on the internet. That's one of the functions of the right temporal lobe, is visual memory recollection. I was remembering this dream that I'd had about the extra corridors and the extra rooms, and I was projecting it out into the real world that I was seeing with my eyes wide open. And it was architecturally correct, and it was sitting in the real world where it would logically and believably be, and it was convincing enough that I was having a hallucination. So I want Dr. Rupert Sheldrake to know that my epileptic episode completely corroborates his theory about the mind projecting out into the world in perfect perspective as I walked around. And as embarrassing as it is to admit this in public, I actually walked into a wall because I thought there was a hallway there. And so, since I admire his intellect and his writing and his theories and have listened to many of his lectures, I also want Dr. Sheldrake to know this, and I want to share this with him. And there you have it. It's been my latest little adventure with the emergency room, and I am now diagnosed as a late onset epileptic with right temporal lobe epilepsy. And according to my research online, I share this malady with Edgar Allan Poe and Fyodor Dostoevsky and Lewis Carroll. Although I can hardly claim that my books, Knock Knock Who's There? The Truth About Our First Years in the Florida Real Estate Business, or my recent book, Default, Escaping the Debt Trap and Avoiding Bankruptcy, are quite as enchanting and charming reading as Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.